Welcome to the Imagination Factory. I'm Sarah,
I'm Keith.
and today we are going to be recapping for you episodes 38, 39, and 40.
So this is working on the roughs of page one of the door. And so, as mentioned in prior recaps, I really struggled with this panel. And then I thought about it, and it kind of having the old panel as reference gave me the ability to very quickly come back to this panel once I had a bit of time and figure out a little bit more closely what I think I wanted to do. And so that's what you're seeing here. It's much more definitive lines and purposeful in regards to what I want for this panel. And it feels more uh, the direction I want to go is more certain.
Yes, this panel now has the right energy, which is the part that we really, kind of struggled with. It was because this was such a pivotal moment so early on that, really getting that motion right and establishing Sam's character in such an interesting way, the light on the door, how it was going to hit, the shadows. This was such an important panel. And this is where it really kind of came together and started to really feel like the beat that it needed to feel like.
That's right. And so if you need a bit of space from something, it's okay. You don't have to like keep on working until you figure it out. You could always leave something and then come back to it. And I find that often when I do that, if I leave something and come back to it, it happens much faster. And you
Mhm.
may end up in the same spot if you were to really work it, but all the time you spent trying to figure it out could have been saved doing something else.
Absolutely. And then we moved on to, finishing up the next panel, which was Sam on the phone, right? So this is after like the door doesn't budge. I'm going to make a call to the landlord and find out what's going on and really kind of figuring out, what the phone looked like, what Sam looked like, what that moment looked like. Came together a lot faster and really started to have that energy of that, twiddling the phone cord and kind of the nervous energy that Sam was now holding.
Yeah. And that's what's going to happen. Sometimes some panels are much faster than others. Sometimes you can envision it much more clearly than another panel. And I would recommend that it's a lot of its energy. If you're like, I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of focus, I
Mhm.
want to work on something more complicated, or if something I'm a little bit more uncertain of, or a much more a panel that's more important, then go for it. If you are like, oh, I'm just kind of like on auto, like just then go with something that you can do very quickly and easily, right? And so for me, I think I gotten to that with the panels where Sam's on the phone. I've drawn people talking on the phone plenty of times, so it's not as complicated. Although in this next panel here, I was trying to figure out like the perspective. And I think we talked
Mhm.
about like making it so that it felt like it was coming towards you a little bit, and that the way that the foreshortening was happening was felt correct. And having Sarah there is a nice
Mhm.
added feature, because oftentimes I'd have to go and check, use reference, and having the ability to have somebody go, no, that looks correct, right?
Well, and anytime you're doing something that is a bit of a strange motion to look at, you have to kind of step back for a second, right? Because it's like, is that actually how an arm looks at that angle? And this was one where, you could tell when we hit it. It's like, yep, that feels right. And whether or not it's actually accurate, it feels right. And that's the most important thing is it feels like it should feel.
That's right. That opened up the conversation to asking you, when it came to writing, were there examples of
Mhm.
something that, like, when you think about it, wasn't exactly like you have to almost maybe like fudge it because it's a weird,
Yes.
when you're visually doing something that you freeze, it doesn't always look normal, because generally you see things in motion, right? And so I was asking, what are examples like that in writing?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when we were talking about sometimes dialogue, right? We like when you write it out, it looks good, but if you say it out loud, it doesn't translate, right? Like it looks good to read it, but when you say it, so sometimes depending on the purpose of how someone's going to consume the content, figuring out if you need to say it out loud and write it in that way, or if it's better to be perfect on the page, because sometimes those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Right. It's interesting how writing and drawing very often parallel each other. And what I like about this process is that having this conversation, having somebody watch me, we can
Mhm.
have these connections, make these connections that we wouldn't necessarily make otherwise. Because I'm like, Sarah, did you think about that with
Yeah,
visual? And she's like, no. And I'm like, yeah. And I hadn't really thought about that with writing.
exactly. And comments like the foreshortening, right? It's like I never really thought about it until you pointed it out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that is true. Like you're used to seeing a motion of grabbing it, but what do we freeze frame? What does that look like? And how that translates. It's really interesting to kind of spend the time inside the other's profession and kind of figure out the similarities and differences of the things that, you do have to second guess that someone else might not realize.
Yeah. And so this panel here, I'm working on had changed from the original. It was much further away, and this one was a little bit more intimate. When you make something where it feels like everything's closer, it gives it a much more intimate feel. And so we end with that panel. Still working on page one, but getting really good. I think amount of process done.
Exactly. We're getting much closer. It's getting much smoother. And the story is really coming together. And all those little nuances that we're adding are really just rounding out the narrative and adding in those details that we couldn't do when everything was so much smaller. Now we can get into some of those details that we weren't able to do before. So thank you for joining us. Make sure you're subscribed, catch up on all the other episodes, keep tuning into our lives, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks so much.